The manuscript arrived in a wooden box with no return address. Inside, wrapped in aged cloth, the dark-covered notebook bore the seal of the Franciscan order in discreet, almost imperceptible relief. A yellowed card lay beside it, reading, "The truth about what Father Pio discovered in the Vatican's forbidden catacombs in 1947. Share cautiously." No signature. The following records have been translated from Italian and transcribed as faithfully as possible. Some passages are damaged, others appear to have been deliberately scratched out. What remains, however, is enough to understand why this document should never have seen the light of day. Teresa Salvini did not believe in coincidences. A rare books, conservator at the Vatican Apostolic Library for nearly 2 decades, she had never been granted permission to access Section Theta 17, the underground vault housing the Holy See's most confidential documents, until that October morning in 2019, when Cardinal Ross summoned her personally for an extraordinary assignment. A set of deteriorated scrolls, evidently very old, had been uncovered during structural renovations in the library's lower levels. The Cardinal offered no explanation for choosing Teresa, but his restless eyes and trembling hands revealed a deeply disturbed man. "Evaluate only the physical condition of the documents, Ms. Salvini. Do not concern yourself with their content," he instructed, never meeting her gaze. "This work does not officially exist. Inform no one." Access to the deepest level of the catacombs required a special badge, biometric verification, and the accompaniment of one of the Swiss guards. The tortuous path followed ever-narrowing corridors, descending staircases that seemed endless. The air grew progressively denser and colder. Teresa noted that some passages were deliberately misaligned with the official floor plans she knew, as if built to disorient visitors. "This is it," the guard said, pausing before a massive iron door. "Are you certain you wish to enter alone, madam?" Teresa nodded, though her instincts screamed to retreat. The Latin inscription above. The door read, "Custodi Arcana Dei," "Keep the secrets of God." The chamber was surprisingly small, lit only by recently installed LED lights. At its center stood a marble table on which rested an oxidized silver box. Beside it, a brown envelope bearing a broken papal seal contained a typed letter dated September 19, 1968, signed by Pope Paul VI. The document authorized the permanent interment of the box's contents, classifying them as apocryphal documents dangerous to the faith. A handwritten note in the same ink read simply, "What Father Pio discovered must remain buried with him." The date coincided exactly with the day after the stigmatized saint's death. Teresa opened the box with hands protected by cotton gloves. Inside lay a worn notebook and a small cylindrical metal case. The notebook appeared to be a personal diary, handwritten in the unmistakable script of Francesco Forgione, Father Pio. The first pages contained the saint's typical spiritual reflections, but beginning the 3rd week of July 1947, the tone shifted dramatically. The date matched Father Pio's unexplained 3-day absence from San Giovanni Rotondo, a period his official biographers always attributed to a retreat for prayer. The entries began hesitantly, as if the saint himself doubted what he had experienced. He described an urgent summons to the Vatican, where he was received not by Pope Pius X, as he expected, but by 3 cardinals whose names he encoded only by initials. They led him to a subterranean level of the basilica that appeared on no official plans. "They asked me to bless and consecrate a newly discovered space," he wrote, "but what I found there cannot be consecrated by human hands, for it does not belong to our world or time." He detailed the accidental discovery of a chamber, During excavations for the Vatican necropolis expansion, workers had removed a wall to reveal a perfectly preserved room, its walls covered with inscriptions in an unknown language and symbols blending Egyptian hieroglyphs with characters no linguist had identified. At the center of the chamber, Father Pio wrote, stood a black stone altar that reflected no light, as if it absorbed all illumination. Above it floated a perfect dodecahedral crystal, the size of an orange, approximately 10 centimeters, from the altar's surface rotating slowly without any visible mechanism, a violation of all we know about the laws of physics. He described approaching the object and experiencing a series of visions that left him physically and spiritually exhausted. I saw an advanced civilization inhabiting a vast island, the size of a continent. I saw their towers of crystal cities, machines powered by energies drawn from the ether itself. I saw how they manipulated matter and consciousness as though they were one substance. Subsequent paragraphs detailed how this civilization, which Father Pio reluctantly identified as Atlantis, was not merely technologically advanced, but spiritually so, in a way that fundamentally contradicted Christian doctrine. They did not worship a single creator, but understood the universe as a complex system of interconnected energies, manipulable through knowledge and technology. What we call miracles was, for them, applied science. Most disturbing was the connection. Father Pio drew between this civilization and the earliest institutional formations of Christianity. The diary suggested that certain Atlantean lineages survived the cataclysm that destroyed their continent, preserving their knowledge in secret societies that infiltrated the power hierarchies of the ancient world, including the Roman Empire and, later, the nascent Church. Here lies the knowledge many seek, but few are prepared to comprehend. Perhaps you, who continue to follow these forbidden accounts, are among the chosen to guard these truths. The journey is long and fraught with peril. Stay with us to receive the next chapters of revelations that challenge official history. Truth always finds its way to those ready to receive it. Teresa noticed several pages had been torn from the diary at this point. The account resumed with Father Pio describing how, after touching the crystal, he received a massive influx of information that rendered him unconscious for hours. Upon awakening, he claimed to have understood the true nature of what he was witnessing. The crystal is a receptacle of consciousness, a living archive containing the complete history of Atlantis and the knowledge it mastered. Not just technological knowledge, but understanding the very structure of reality. They discovered that the material universe is only a temporary manifestation of something far more fundamental, pure information, encoded in a substrate that transcends space and time. The narrative grew ever more unsettling. Father Pio wrote that the accompanying cardinals admitted the Vatican had known of these Atlantean relics for centuries. There existed a secret order within the Church, predating the Templars, whose mission was to locate and protect these artifacts scattered across the world. They told me that what we call miracles in Christian tradition has two origins. Some are genuinely divine, manifestations of God's grace. Others are applications of this Atlantean knowledge, preserved by initiates within the Church. The stigmata on my hands, which I always considered a divine blessing, may have been the result of Atlantean technology activated in me during sleep, a kind of mark identifying me as an unconscious bearer of this knowledge. This revelation apparently shattered Father Pio. The following pages contained agonized questions about the nature of his own faith and mystical experiences. He wondered whether his entire spiritual life had been manipulated by this secret Vatican order. The cylindrical case accompanying the diary contained a fragment of crystal, roughly the size of a thimble, showing the same light-absorbing characteristic noted in the account. Teresa observed that even under direct lighting, the fragment seemed to emit its own darkness. The diary's final notes were fragmented, as if written in delirium or trance. Father Pio described visions granted by the crystal, an alternate history of humanity in which Atlantis was not the only lost advanced civilization. He recounted cycles of evolution and destruction, where entire human societies achieved supreme knowledge only to be wiped out by catastrophes, some natural, others self-inflicted. Teresa discerned a disturbing pattern in these descriptions. Each civilizational cycle collapsed upon reaching a specific developmental point, the moment it understood the informational nature of reality and began to manipulate it directly. The ultimate knowledge, which always destroys its possessor, is that reality is not merely programmable, it already is a program, Father Pio wrote. And the most terrible truth, it is being executed with a purpose that does not serve humanity. The final entry, dated September 22, 1947, was particularly harrowing. The cardinals returned today. They brought the pontiff with them. They will confiscate my diary and the fragment. I agreed to remain silent in exchange for a promise. Atlantean knowledge will never be used. The chamber will be sealed forever. I return to San Giovanni Rotondo tomorrow, but I know I will never escape their surveillance. The visions continue, even without the crystal. I see what they intend to do. May God forgive me, but I begin to doubt he exists, as I have always believed. What I saw in the crystal suggests something very different, much older and more incomprehensible than our human theologies. The diary ended abruptly. Teresa closed the notebook, her hands shaking uncontrollably. She now understood why Cardinal Ross appeared so disturbed. This was not a mere restoration project, it was a theological time bomb. As she carefully returned the items to the box, Teresa noticed something she had overlooked initially. On the back of the last diary page, written in different ink and an even more unsteady hand, was a brief note dated September 22, 1968, a day before Father Pio's death. They discovered I hid this second diary. They come for me tomorrow. The fragment I kept showed me the future, 2026. The cycle is about to complete again. Events are already in motion. The true nature of the universe will be revealed to all at once. The great revelation cannot be stopped. May God, if he exists as we think, have mercy on our souls. Beside this final note was a small diagram, 3 concentric circles with a dot at the center, identical to symbols Teresa had recently seen in news reports about unexplained formations found in fields in Argentina, England, and Russia in recent months. The guard knocked on the door, informing her that her time was up. Teresa reassembled everything in the box, except for one decision that would forever change her fate. She discreetly photographed each diary page with her phone before leaving. The images were automatically uploaded to her personal cloud storage. 3 days later, Cardinal Ross was found dead in his apartment. Natural causes, the official statement said. A week after that, Teresa was informed her services were no longer needed at the Vatican Apostolic Library. Her badge was revoked without explanation. On the night she left the Vatican for the last time, Teresa returned to her apartment to find it ransacked. Her laptop and all electronic devices were gone. Fortunately, the images were safe in the cloud, accessible from any computer. In the following months, Teresa researched obsessively. She discovered unsettling patterns. Archaeological digs mysteriously halted at specific global sites, always involving the church or governments. Quantum computing scientists disappearing or dying in inexplicable accidents. An exponential rise in sightings of unidentified aerial phenomena exhibiting impossible physical capabilities. More disturbing still, she learned that in 1947, the same year as Father Pio's Vatican experiences, there was a global spike in similar sightings, culminating in the famous Roswell incident. The synchronicity was impossible to ignore. In December 2019, Teresa finally found someone willing to help. Professor Emilio Vasquez, a linguist specializing in dead languages at the University of Barcelona. Vasquez had published controversial papers suggesting that certain symbols discovered at archaeological sites, separated by thousands of miles and millennia, shared a grammatical structure too precise to be coincidental. Teresa sent him images of the symbols described in Father Pio's diary. His reply came in a single encrypted email: "Meet me in person. Do not trust electronic communications." They met in a crowded Lisbon cafe. Vasquez looked older than his 58 years, eyes constantly scanning the surroundings. "The symbols you sent," he said quietly, "are identical to those we found in a submerged cave in the Bahamas in 2012. That expedition was mysteriously defunded after we discovered a chamber with inscriptions that defied the official chronology. Radiocarbon dating placed the sediments at 11,700 years, exactly when Plato dates Atlantis' fall." He slid a USB drive across the table. "Everything I documented is here, including partial translations. It's not merely a language, it's a programming code. The symbols not only describe reality, they seem to interact with it in ways we do not fully understand." The professor downed his coffee in a nervous gulp. "There are groups actively suppressing this information and others trying to exploit it, religious and governmental alike. The curious thing is that they sometimes appear to collaborate despite their ideological differences." "What do you think will happen in 2026? Teresa asked, referencing Father Pio's final prophecy. Vasquez offered a sad smile. "I don't know the details, but I understand the pattern. Humanity is on the brink of a technological threshold, the fusion of artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and genetic engineering. We are approaching the point every previous civilization reached before its collapse." He leaned in. "The crystal Father Pio found, I believe it is part of a consciousness recording technology, a backup of Atlantean knowledge. And it's not the only one. Others lie hidden around the globe, some already activated." The professor checked his watch. "We can't speak further here. Use the contact on the drive to access our private forum. There are others like us, scientists, dissident clergy, witnesses. We're connecting the dots." That was the last time Teresa saw Vasquez. 3 weeks later, he vanished during an expedition in the Montserrat Mountains of Spain. Search efforts were inexplicably suspended after just 5 days, a woefully inadequate response for a scholar of his stature. The USB drive contained exactly what Vasquez promised, plus an encrypted file Teresa only accessed months later. It was a global map of strange energy anomalies forming a perfect geometric pattern around the planet, points coinciding exactly with major religious and megalithic sites. The Vatican, Mecca, Jerusalem, Angkor Wat, Stonehenge, the Giza Pyramids, and Machu Picchu. In March 2020, when the global pandemic isolated billions, Teresa finally felt secure enough to access Vasquez's forum using anonymized connections and multiple security layers. What she found was at once terrifying and validating. Hundreds of people sharing similar accounts of suppressed discoveries, inexplicable technologies, and mysterious interventions. A pattern emerged from these collective stories. Since 1947, a coordinated global effort has controlled certain types of discoveries and information. It is not a mere human conspiracy, but something operating with algorithmic precision, using existing institutions, governments, religions, corporations as vectors for its goals. One forum participant, identified only as Cardinal 17, allegedly a high-ranking Vatican official, provided what would be the final piece of the puzzle. What Father Pio discovered, what all genuine mystics eventually comprehend, is that our reality is a simulation, not in an abstract philosophical sense, but literally an informational environment programmed. Religions are interfaces created so we can interact with the system's parameters without understanding its true nature. Miracles are temporary modifications of the reality code. The Atlanteans discovered this and began reprogramming the simulation, which triggered automatic defense protocols. The system eliminates any civilization that uncovers its true nature. The implications were staggering. If true, they meant that all human history is a controlled cycle, allowing advances up to a point before an inevitable reset. By July 2021, after months of forum exchanges, Teresa began noticing subtle surveillance at her new Turin apartment. Cars parked for long periods, strange glances in neighborhood shops, small misalignments in her belongings when she returned home. She decided to act preemptively, compiling all she had discovered into a single document, including the diary photographs, Vasquez's translations, and the coordinates of the energy anomalies. She split the file into 5 parts, sending each to different trusted forum members with instructions to release them publicly should anything happen to her. One of those packages, the story you are now reading, arrived by complex digital routes in the hands of the person who made it available. The other 4 remain hidden, protected by advanced encryption, awaiting the right moment. Teresa Salvini disappeared in September 2022. Her apartment was found impeccably clean, with no signs of struggle. Neighbors reported seeing a woman resembling her leaving voluntarily with 2 formally dressed men. Italian authorities closed the case after a cursory investigation. The crystal fragment was never recovered. Rumor has it that Teresa managed to smuggle it out of the Vatican and now possesses an item that could definitively validate the entire story. If true, it remains a mystery. The questions that linger are unsettling. If we live in a programmed reality, who or what created it and to what end? If previous civilizations discovered this truth and were eliminated, are we on the same path? What will truly unfold in 2026, according to Father Pio's final prophecy? And perhaps the most disquieting question of all, by reading these revelations, have you become part of a pattern the system can detect? Have you noticed subtle changes in your life since exploring these ideas? Small synchronicities, more vivid dreams, technology acting strangely around you. Truth, as always, exists in layers. Some will dismiss this as an elaborate fiction woven with historical facts for verisimilitude. Others will recognize elements that resonate deeply with experiences and knowledge never publicly shared. What do you believe? And more importantly, what will you do with this knowledge?